Hey, welcome everybody. Principles of Marketing, Chapter 3, Evaluating Opportunities in the Changing Market Environment, and how poignant these words are in today's day and age. We are living at a crossroads where the old world, and what we call the old world, which is not so old, but something in the past, whatever was normal for the past 40 to 50 years, has basically been upended with the pandemic. The way that business is deployed, the amount of internet usage that is currently being used, which has eclipsed prior periods because the dependency on the internet is unbelievable. It has been growing, but I think it kind of spiraled in a positive direction with the advent of the coronavirus. Zoom technology has basically saved. If you really want to look at it, thank God it has saved industry. Can you imagine if Zoom didn't exist or anything like Zoom didn't exist? Virtually most of commerce would end because you'd have no way of meeting people. There'd be no interaction. Colleges would be in a lot of trouble. They would all have to go exclusively online. It would be a big problem. So marketing is and just strategy, strategic marketing, and just strategy in general. It's about pivoting. It's about moving and shifting. As I mentioned in the previous classes, Turtle College did that with the pandemic. And had they not moved as quickly as they did, they would have risked, heaven forbid, literally destroying themselves because everyone else has pivoted in that direction, and we could not have afforded not to have gone in that direction. So it's important to understand that if to evaluate opportunities, and sometimes you must take the opportunity, because by not taking the opportunity, that will threaten your prosperity, and that's something very dangerous, and you have to be mindful of that. So tonight we're going to look at the variables that shape the environment of marketing strategy planning, try to understand why company objectives are important in guiding marketing strategy planning, see how the resources of a firm affect the search for opportunities. You need gas in your tank. Patton said, my men can eat their belts. My tank's got to have gas. You need to have your resources. You need to have your fuel. Know how to conduct a competitor analysis and how different types of competition affect strategy planning. Understand how the economic and technological environment can affect strategic planning. Number 3, know how elements of the political and legal environment affect marketing strategy planning. Number 7, understand the cultural and social environment and how demographic trends affect strategy planning. Understand how to screen and evaluate marketing strategy and opportunities. And then finally, understand important new terms. So we're on slide number 4, the marketing environment. So we have a narrowing down process, which should be considered very important because the important elements of the marketing environment and how they shift need to be funneled. In other words, you have to funnel things down to its, to the ground level. The key issues to consider is the marketing strategy planning process, which involves that narrowing down to the best opportunities, which target markets to focus on, what products and services to focus on, because you can't make everyone happy. Developing a strategy that gives the firm a competitive advantage, and I'm going to add to that, it's not just a competitive advantage, but I was saying this last night, a sustainable competitive advantage, something that'll be around, and provides target customers with superior customer value. And if, God willing, you'll have me for business policy, you'll understand that customer value is very important, that the price has to be low enough, not to hinder your profit-making capabilities, but it has to be low enough to create a tremendous amount of value so your customers keep on coming back for more and more. Now, slide 5, and please stop me if you have any questions. Now, I know that this slide, me personally, Exhibit 3.1, looks like a little bit of a hot mess. It's kind of like all over the place. That's why I prefer to hit the bottom of this slide. And all of you have access to this, the summary overview, specific aspects of the external market company and competitors aid the firm in evaluating opportunities. We spoke about this briefly last week about SWOT analysis. And within a SWOT analysis, we have 2 arenas that we deal with, or that we pay attention to. The first is the internal, the strengths and the weaknesses. Those are internal factors. Then there's the external environment, the opportunities and threats. Sometimes if you don't take on the opportunity, that will end up threatening you. So your opportunity, an opportunity loss will turn into a threat, which can ultimately weaken your internal processes. So we have to look at some key issues over here. Each company has objectives it wants to accomplish and specific resources at its disposal. Resources are not infinite, they're finite, and as such, you need to make sure that they're deployed, just like an army doesn't have endless amounts of soldiers, and you have to be very careful to deploy the right amount, keep the right amount garrisoned or in the back, and then deploy them in the right formations so that they're most effective. When looking at its competitors, firms must include not only its current competitors, but potential ones as well. Now, when we look at potential entrants, Michael Porter has something which we may talk about later on, either in this course or in a future course for sure, the five forces model. And what the five forces model looks at are the issues or the variables within a given market that will either signal others to enter or will deter them from entering. One of the things that's very important to look at is the amount of competition within the said arena. So if you have a business environment that has hyper competition, that itself will be what we call a turnoff for any would-be entrant, because if the competition is so fierce, I as a new entrant stand no chance or very little chance, because I have to go up against brand loyalty. I have to go up against established players within the field that I will have to contend against, actually contend with. So the next point is the external market environment is made up of the economic environment and the technological environment, and of course the political and cultural and social environment, all of which played a tremendous role in this election. We're not getting too into a political debate over here, but big tech had a tremendous amount of sway, and of course culture and cancel culture and social environment definitely had a tremendous impact on how the election came out. It caused a new dynamic that never existed before, and it's something that's not going to go away too soon. And that's why I always tell people to make sure that your campaigns, if you ever go to politics, are clean. Dirty doesn't work. You got to stay clean, stick to the issues, and that's like that in business or anytime you have to debate someone or sell something to someone. Stick to the facts. People are entitled to their opinions, but they're not entitled to their facts. Don't get personal, don't get dirty, don't make fun, don't get mean and nasty. That never ever works. It may get you laughs, it may get you satired, but it won't help you accomplish your goals. So I'm just saying that as a general statement for anybody going into politics or business. Keep it clean, all right? Because we live in a world where anything you say is going to be there forever and everyone's going to hear it, and you can't unsay things. Point number 3, opportunity evaluation is aided by several screening criteria or strategic planning grids covered in the chapter. Often firms must plan for multiple products simultaneously, and this is because of their marketing research. The market research tells them that it is advantageous to have multiple products or multiple services available at different levels because there are different types of customers. Today I spoke to my payroll company about possibly transitioning to another product, and they said it's not a wise idea, and they showed me why. They showed me a PowerPoint slide with the various offerings of where I was thinking of going and to what I'm being offered or to what I have currently. And just by looking at the wealth of services that I have and what I currently have and the dearth or the lack of services where I wanted to go, it's quite obvious that I should stay put where I am. And that's very important because every company realizes that it's going to have customers with different needs. Once all of the above are considered, a firm should be able to identify the best opportunities to pursue that match up with their competencies, match up with their resources, and most importantly, match up with their mission and their strategic objectives. Okay? These objectives are general in scope, serving as guidelines. A firm should develop its own objectives, which reflect the company's mission statement and objectives. And the mission statement is who we are and what we do. It's supposed to be a very, very short, generic, not non-generic, very specific statement that kind of sums up what a company is all about. And just not to digress too much, I'm just going to give you an example of a couple of amazing mission statements that I'm very blown away by here. Google's mission Our company mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. That's about as straight and clean as you can get. Here's another one. Amazon. Our mission is to continually raise the bar of the customer experience by using the internet and technology to help consumers find, discover, and buy anything, and empower businesses and content creators to maximize their success. We aim to be Earth's most customer-centric company. I agree. That they are. There's other deficiencies, which I'm not going to get into, how they treat their employees and the kind of stuff that they allow to be sold on their website. We're not going to get into that, but I will say this. They are very customer-centric, and it's quite obvious for anybody who's ever had a customer service issue with Amazon, they're pretty good at resolving it. But here you have a mission statement that kind of encapsulates what the company stands for. So just to get into the key issues of the slide, I'm not really focusing on the slide, I'm really focusing more on the notes on the bottom, which does a better job explaining things. So mission statement helps set the course. It sets out the organization's basic purpose for being. It's raison d'etre, the reason for being. The whole firm must work towards the same objectives. This is something that we learn in Principles of Management. Henry Fayol speaks about this. Everyone goes in a unified direction. One leader, one set of objectives. Everyone's going the same objective, going towards the same objectives. Company objectives provide the larger framework for setting marketing objectives. Marketing objectives guide the development of objectives for each element of the marketing mix. Knowing the objectives for a specific element of the marketing mix then guides more specific objectives. For example, marketing objectives drive promotion objectives. Whatever your objectives are, that's going to drive how you promote it. Because promotion is super, super important. People have to know how you're going to get things out. Are we going to go traditional? Are we going to go print? Are we going to go bus terminals? Are we going to go only on the internet? How are we going to get the word out? And then promotion objectives will drive objectives for each element of the promotion blend. Objectives should be explicit, quantified, and related to time deadlines. Without those elements, you're going to have a hot mess. You're going to have vagueness. You're going to have fogginess because it's not explicit. If it's not quantified, how are you going to measure success? And if you don't have deadlines, how are you going to keep people on course? Any questions thus far? So company resources may limit search for opportunities. So we look at financial strengths, production capability and flexibility, and marketing strengths. It's important to evaluate how realistic each company opportunity is in relation to the specific capabilities of the company. Just because you have an opportunity doesn't mean that you have to go for it, because you have to make sure that you have the right resources to capitalize on those opportunities. Excuse me. Key issues, key areas that limit the search for opportunities are financial resources determine opportunities, the great almighty dollar. Some opportunities require more capital than others, and if a company lacks that capital, it can't take advantage of it. For example, developing a drug to cure cancer might require a very large investment, and research and development having this experience, I currently work in cancer care, I can tell you that drugs are astronomically high because it is expensive as a result of the research and development that went into making the drug, and now the drug companies need to recoup that. And the only way they can do that is by charging ridiculous amounts of money. What and how? Yes, it is supply and demand, but with cancer care, cancer is such a frantic thing. The demand is almost always there. So many people have various cancers, so it's not an option. I mean, yeah, I mean, some drugs are generic and lost their exclusivity, and it's quite cheap. But then you have these boutique drugs that come out, and some of them are so expensive; they're like $30,000 a dose. And that particular drug that I'm thinking of is a biological. In other words, it's made out of the person's blood. So it's not like you can go to the store and buy it. It has to be spun in a centrifuge, specifically using that person's blood and plasma and whatnot. So it's not like, you have another option. You can go somewhere else. Only you have your blood. You know what I mean? So there are things like that. It's quite frightening and quite expensive. I know that drugs that they use for that we use to treat multiple sclerosis and things of that nature, super expensive. It's only thousands of dollars per dose. And the reason for that is because I don't know how many untold hundreds of millions of dollars go into it, into the research and development. Remember, America is very regulated with the Food and Drug Administration. The fact that we got this coronavirus vaccine in record time is only because basically a knife was put to the FDA's neck and said, listen, take down all the safety stops and just do it that, that it's safe. But don't be too crazy cautious like you are with everything else. And I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I guess desperate times call for desperate measures, but a cancer drug does not get approved as quickly as the coronavirus vaccine did. And unfortunately, because of that long process, a lot of people die as a result of that. Sometimes people are lucky, they get to sign up for a trial, basically sign away their life, stating that, listen, whatever happens, we're not holding the company responsible. And, and many times that saves people's lives. But it's a brutal business, it's a cutthroat business, and there's a lot of money to be made, and they make a lot of money. These drug companies, they can wine and dine you. They, back in the good old days, they used to come by, give you free lunches, give you everything, all these nice little tchotchkes, like nice, stuff. It's not like that anymore. They've cut back a lot. There's no more free lunches for us and stuff like that. I guess COVID really put a dent in things. But it's a multi-billion-dollar business, and one that is, people really want to get into. Let's move on over here. What and how many units can be produced at what cost? The company must decide if it has the production capacity and labor skills needed to pursue a particular opportunity, if it has the production flexibility. For example, if a company makes canned vegetables and canned fruit, if it wanted to engage in making canned fish, canned salmon, canned tuna, etc., sardines, it would have to make sure that it's capable of switching and I guess cleaning machinery and getting new whatever machinery is needed. I'm not an expert in I don't work in a cannery, so I don't know all the different things that go into it. So as production increases, the cost of producing each unit decreases, because that's a fact of economics. That's something you learn about in economics. Making changes can be costly and takes time. Anytime you make a change, it takes time. You got to make sure it's done right. Marketing strategies often build on existing marketing resources. Does the company have competitive advantage, such as a familiar brand? And using that as an example, that's one of the things in Porter's 5 Forces that'll prevent a would-be entrant in coming in, because the new company lacks that brand familiarity. In other words, the companies that have been established, that have been extant for many years, are already positioned in the marketplace. People already look at them as a certain type, and it's very difficult to kind of move them. I mean, just look at Hyundai. It took Hyundai, I don't know how many years. I remember when Hyundai first came out in the 80s, the first Hyundai, I rode in one. I was terrified. It was summer camp, and my dad came to pick me up in his friend's Hyundai. It literally frightened me. I thought that if it goes more than 50 miles an hour, the screws will start flying out of the, like it will start, like pieces will start coming off the car as you drive down the highway. And it was a real fear. It was the most bumpy ride. It was an ugly looking car. It was frightening, to say the least. And now, look at the Genesis, and look at the Sonata. Even look at the Elantra. It's a beautiful car. Look how it's grown. And it was a tough fall, because if you think about it, Hyundai had to come in and fight against, forget about the American brands, because the American brands, I don't want to be anti-American here, I'm sorry, the American car industry is nothing compared to the Japanese industry. The only thing that we actually do very well with is pickup trucks. Like the Ford F-150 is the most popular pickup truck in the world. It's the most sought after. Nobody can touch it. But that's about it. And you look at the Japanese car companies, your Toyota and Honda and Nissan, those are the 3 big ones. They eclipse anything, especially Toyota and Honda. There's nothing, you can't say anything bad about Toyota. I've had both, Toyotas and Hondas. I never had a problem. I only had problems with my Chryslers. I should call them Crisis. They don't break. They just don't break. They don't go bad. They don't break. I have a Nissan Rogue. It's decent. It's very good. Nissan's a pretty decent company, obviously not in the same level as Honda or Toyota, but it's up there. And then for Sonata to come in and the Genesis and just that whole entry into the Japanese and the worldwide car market was very gutsy. And it took a long time. I would say it took a good 15 years before Hyundai actually became a recognized brand. And also, I think they took a big chance of calling themselves Hyundai because it sounds like Honda. I can't tell you how many times I confuse the two brands. So I don't know why they did that. That's a little bit strange from a marketing perspective. You don't want to sound like your competitor. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. And you have your other players in the Japanese market. Your Suzuki. I don't know where Suzuki stands, but to me, it's not as. I think Suzuki is more of the off road. The SUV kind of thing. I don't really see that many Suzukis on the road. But again, the Japanese car market is very, very strong. So it was very gutsy for Hyundai to do what it did. Strong channel relations, getting your product from A to Z is very important. You got to have people that do that for you. Creative brand advertising. Go ahead. Yes, I know that. That's very cool. It's a cool car. My daughter just bought an Elantra. Hyundai, yeah. It's not Hyundai, it's Hyundai. Or, I don't know. This is what I heard. I mean, I don't speak Korean, but anyway. Uh, South Korea is great at producing things. Samsung is Apple's biggest competitor, I would say, is a South Korean company. Perhaps we'll have time to watch a video tonight about how big Samsung is. I mentioned that it's one of the it's mammoth. We don't even realize how big it is. Um, Thank you for looking up Simcha. Creative brand advertising and industry-leading sales forces. You got to depend on that sales force. They're the boots on the ground. They're the ones getting you the stuff. So the knowledge of people at the firm can be a unique resource and something that can be leveraged by analyzing success or failures. Remember, failures can be turned around to become a success for you. Depends how you look at it. If you fail and you crumple and you feel bad and you kick the can and you feel sorry for yourself, then the failure turns into something that becomes a handicap. If you turn that failure around, you could have a success. So, by analyzing success or failures in relation to the firm's resources, management can discover why the firm was successful or why it failed in the past and what it could do to switch things around. And sometimes it requires minimal tweaking and just doing a better job at harnessing your strengths. So, here the slide tells you avoid head-on competition. I don't know if you've ever seen these old war movies where you have like the Romans against, I don't know, the Goths or whatever, and you see like the two opposing armies, they're marching towards each other, and the Romans get into formation, testudo formation, and the barbarians shoot out arrows and they catch it, and then they close ranks and they start fighting each other. So when you get into those close quarter combat, there's going to be a melee and you're going to have death and carnage on both sides. The same is true in business. Anytime you go head on, especially with a well-established company, you better be prepared for a bloody battle. So the competitive environment affects the number and types of competitors the marketing manager must face and how they may behave. Prudent managers choose strategies that avoid head-on competition because it's costly, it bleeds a lot of resources, and or plan for competition when it's inevitable. And a good way of doing that is looking at the underserved areas of the market, the niches where your large competitors may not even be interested. They're probably not even going to go there, or if they do, or if they have in the past, they weren't that successful. Those may be golden opportunities for you to avoid head-on competition. Key issues to look at is marketers should understand the differences among types of market situations. Monopoly, we're not going to go too heavily into this. This is something that should be covering extensively in your economic classes. Monopoly, one company serves the entire customer base. Competitor-free environments are rare, and of course they're dangerous. They're not good for the economy. Monopolistic competition, a number of different firms offer marketing mixes that some customers see as different. In other words, you have different firms that use the 4Ps in different ways to differentiate themselves. So monopolistic competition is typical and a challenge because one company will deploy its 4Ps differently and then you will, and perhaps be more successful. Oligopoly is kind of like a monopoly with two or three companies. Think of the cola market as definitely an oligopoly. Cola market is basically Coke and Pepsi. There really isn't anything else out there that's really formidable. And that's an example of an oligopoly. Barriers to competitive entry are high simply because there are only like 2 or 3 real players in this world market. Pure competition, a large number of firms compete with similar products. Price is the determining factor in making a purchase. So the lower the price, the higher the customer value is, and the higher the likelihood that people will come back for more. We skip the next couple of slides because 9 and 10 are more of the what I call the blah blah slides. Next thing is analyzing competitors to find a competitive advantage. Marketing managers must understand the competitive environment. Think of it as a war. You send out your scouts. Your scouts look at the enemy strengths, enemy weaknesses, troop formations, deployment. They try to, sometimes they'll try to infiltrate, and that's kind of where you get illegal corporate espionage. They try to figure out or try to anticipate what their future moves will be. So we do a competitor analysis, which is an organized approach for evaluating the strengths and weaknesses of current or potential competitors' marketing strategies. Marketers do this by gathering information on the competitors from a variety of internal and external sources. We look at then the competitive rivals, the firms that will be closest competitors, the ones that impact you more directly. Marketing managers must anticipate future competition, look at the announcements that they make, look at trends. Successful marketers naturally attract competition. The better you are, the more attention you bring to yourself, and of course, the more competition it breeds. Just think of it this way: you become super popular, you end up having more enemies. It's just the way it works. People that are very quiet and out of the spotlight don't really have too many enemies or competitors. It's the people that are out there in the front, always they have a lot of competition. Competitor matrix, an organized table that compares the strengths and weaknesses of a company with those of its competitive rivals. It's kind of like a side-by-side comparison. And the search for sustainable competitive advantage, which is what I mentioned before, a marketing mix that customers see as better than a competitor's mix and cannot be easily copied. Just think of Walmart. Just think of the 4 Ps that they use: the price and the place, more than anything else. The fact that Walmart is ubiquitous, meaning all, everywhere. Simcha, do you have Walmart where you live or not yet? You do. Okay. So let me ask you a question. How has it impacted the local marketplace and the mom and pop shops? Has it destroyed it? Really? Why? Culturally? Is it because of culture? Culturally, it's not accepted as much? You talking about guns? So like guns are frowned upon in your country? It's very hard to get a gun? Only the criminals get. If you're not a drug dealer, then you can't get a gun. It's like New York. It's great. Yeah, that's right. As they say in Yiddish, for Geld man kann treffen alles. For money, you can get everything. Okay, so nothing is different where you live. All right, the world is the same, I see. Okay, let's move on to slide 13. Marketers need information about competitors, and this is where we kind of get into the murky world of corporate espionage. Marketing managers should seek out information on competitive practices. The search for information can raise ethical issues on how that information is gleaned. Are you sending people to get employed, to get jobs in your competition, and then steal files and kind of sit in on corporate meetings? I know for this reason, Apple is very, very, very quiet about what it does. Even people inside don't really know what other people are doing because they're always very paranoid about information being leaked and getting out there and ruining their competitive advantage. For them, that's a very, very big thing. Just to expand this slide for a minute. So inside we have the 4 Ps. It looks like one of those games Simon Says. When I was a kid, we used to have this game that had the different colors. But you have your target market in the middle, which is the people that you're targeting, the groups of people you're targeting. Then you have the 4 Ps, the place, the promotion, the price, and the product, which are your marketing variables. Then you have the direct marketing environment, which is your resources, customers, and competitive environment. And then you have And then you have the external environment, which is the economic environment, technological, political, legal, and cultural and social environments, which we mentioned tend to really, really impact how you do business. And we mentioned the election, how technology really shaped, technology and culture kind of merged into one unified front that basically controlled. I don't want to get into conspiracy of it, but controlled a lot of information and the flow of information. And I'm not weighing in good or bad. I don't want to say anything that's going to get me thrown off YouTube, because that's where I'm posting this. I don't really care. I'm not being really monetized or anything like that. But in today's day and age, you got to be very careful what you say. You don't want to get misconstrued. Slide 16. The economic environment is impacted by rapid change. There's a global economy which has been around for many, many years now, and of course, interest rates in countries change and impact how marketing is done. So, as far as a summary and overview of concepts, the economic environment affects the way firms and the whole economy use resources. The economic environment is impacted by interactions of all elements of the macro greater economic system. Key issues to look at is the economic environment can change very rapidly. Periods of rapid business decline, even a well-planned marketing strategy may fail. Just look at the coronavirus. A lot of companies went under, but there's some companies that already been around, like Amazon, that doubled, tripled in its value because it seized different opportunities. Marketing strategies change in a recession. During a recession, consumers spend less on products that are not necessities. Therefore, marketing managers find ways to adapt their marketing strategies and lessen the impact of the recession. Interest rates and inflation affect consumer buying process. Interest rates can go up sharply in times of high inflation. Buying power declines during high inflation. The global economy is increasingly connected. Competition can come from almost anywhere. Global trade is affected by exchange rates. Something happens in one country, it'll cause a trickle-down effect or a domino effect worldwide. Okay, so we're just going to skip the next couple of blah blah slides. Go to slide 21. Political environment. The political environment refers to the way societies order their governments and to the attitudes of the government and the people towards business. Let's talk about two examples of different characteristics of the political environment. Key issues to look at. Nationalism is an emphasis on a country's interests before anything else. In other words, America first, so to speak. Nationalism can be limiting in international markets by reducing sales and blocking marketing activity to the outsiders. Regional economic groups are becoming more important. Now, I know this slide is a bit outdated. It's pre-Trump. The NAFTA is gone for now. I don't know if the Biden administration is going to reinstate it. I have no idea. It just seems like the Biden administration is focused now on undoing anything Trump did. So I don't know to what extent they'll go, if they'll get rid of NAFTA, because I know that Biden was open about that NAFTA is bad for America. He actually agreed with Trump, but there was very few occasions. The EU, and of course with the EU you have the exit of Britain, Brexit, which is very difficult. And now slide 22, the typical joke I make. Why is this Japanese man so angry in this picture? If you look at it, the political environment, is a picture of a very angry looking Japanese man. Question I ask, the same joke I make in every class, why is he angry? Although Europe is becoming a large unified market, marketers will still encounter differences among European countries. Key issues over here in this particular slide. Adero wants marketers to keep in mind that a website can attract prospects from all over the world. This really is not something that needs to be said anymore. It's obvious. Anybody without a website is basically like a barbarian living outside of normal society, and we don't even look at companies like that. It also wants marketers to note that a website won't be successful in turning them into customers if it ignores nationalism and cultural differences, which is true, especially in the Japanese market. Japanese mentality is different than American mentality. You must respect it. If you come into Japan with an American attitude, you are going to fail because the two cultures are different. One is not better than the other. It's just different. And because of that difference, you need to pivot and make sure that you do what you got to do to make people happy. Slide 23, the legal environment. Key anti-monopoly laws. Some of these things, like the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890, Clayton Act, FTC, Robinson Apartment Act, Wheeler-Legg Amendment, the Anti-Merger Act, all these things you learn about in social studies. If you take Regents here in New York City, your 10th grade history class should cover these things. And I'm sure you never heard of these things because in your country, it's fine. Because I'm sure they have antitrust and anti-monopoly laws, but these laws were all made in America. So this is like good old-fashioned American history, good for the coffee table, good if you're playing Jeopardy or Trivia Pursuit. So the legal environment refers to the rules and laws that set standards for conduct. Further, these rules and laws are enforced by legal power. Starting in 1890, the U.S. Congress passed a series of laws designed to encourage competition. Each of these laws regulate different aspects of the marketing mix. There's a relationship between anti-monopoly laws and marketing mix planning. For example, the Sherman Act prohibits monopoly or conspiracy to control a product, distribution channels, or prices, giving more freedom for other companies to use their marketing mixes more freely. The Sherman Act deals with conspiracy or restraint of trade. Then it goes through the various acts. We're not going to go through a Clayton Act, so you can read it for yourself. It's not a history class, but it's quite interesting to look at all these federal enactments and different parts of the economy that they were trying to shape and mold. And this is what they did in an attempt to thwart the monopolistic tendencies or the robber baron mentality of of your Rockefellers and Carnegies and people of that ilk that tried to control American interests. Chase, but it's kind of hard. J.P. Morgan Chase lent, I don't know the equivalent of how many hundreds of millions, maybe even $1 trillion to America in one of its, I think it was in the 1870s when America was going through tremendous financial downturns. They basically, bailed out the American economy. And if you bail out the American economy, it's kind of hard not to favor you because, I owe you one. You saved my life. So I don't know how that played out. The legal environment, this slide provides a description of some important federal regulatory agencies, the FDA and the Consumer Product Safety Commission, which deals with consumer product safety, many of which deal with consumer protection. So the consumer protection laws are not new. Sellers are required to be truthful, meet contracts, and stand behind their products. Make sure they're not dangerous. That's why you always hear about these product recalls. The FDA, food and drugs are controlled by the FDA. One major initiative of the FDA is the development of standards of nutritional labeling, very, very popular, that became popularized in the 90s. The FDA came out as a result of a book written by what we would call, in those days, a muckraker. That's basically a journalist who kind of stirs up the dirt and exposes corruption. And basically is written by a gentleman named Upton Sinclair, who went incognito in the Chicago meatpacking industry and exposed all the horrific things that were going on in the meatpacking industry, all the disgusting rats and just fetid and rotten food that was being, sold and perfumed and colored. It was disgusting. And America was shocked. And what does America do when it gets shocked and embarrassed? It creates government, more government. So thankfully, it did a good thing. It created the FDA to protect us from the corruption of business doing things like, producing unsafe foods and drugs. Product safety is controlled. The Consumer Product Safety Act of 1972 empowers its commission to remove unsafe products from the market. State and local laws vary. For example, every state has different automotive franchise legislation governing the retailing of new vehicles, and of course, like emission standards and things like that. Laws and enforcement differ across countries because legal environments are closely tied to national governments. Laws and enforcements vary significantly around the world. Okay, cultural and social environment. So we kind of mentioned each of these things on one slide, and now the book or the slides are going through it in fine detail. So you have cultural change and demographic data. Demographics is basically what type of people live in a certain area. How many men, how many women, single households, how many people, the ages, the income levels, the education levels. These are things that we look at. The cultural and social environment affects how and why people live and behave as they do. And it's very important to marketers. Key issues. The cultural and social environment affects how and why. Go ahead. I think it's really a grammatical. It's why people live and behave as they do. So you're reading the sentence. you're stopping the sentence in mid sentence. It's affects how and why people live and behave as they do, not why people live. It's why people. It's okay. It's a little awkward. I hear what you're saying. It's poorly worded. It's a badly worded sentence. I will give that to you. Key issues: the cultural and social environment affects how and why people live and behave as they do. I guess another bad sentence. You will write a letter to McGraw-Hill and tell them to change it. I'll sign it for you if you'd like. This includes demographic trends in population trends and income, or the lack thereof. And income is a super important aspect. Country's income, the standard of living, what the general output is of a country. If a country's poor, we're going to have very limited marketing opportunities. Believe it or not, one of the most popular and new indicators of companies' wealth and of potential marketing sustainability is how many people have smartphones. Why do you think the usage of smartphones indicates wealth or the lack thereof within a country? Why? Why do you think smartphone usage or owning a smartphone? Right, they're expensive, right. But there's another aspect besides the expense. What about the smartphone makes a country potentially more? Can somebody just mute their? I didn't hear that. Go ahead, Simcha. Go ahead. Say that again. But what do you do with a smartphone? It opens up the internet to you. So that means that you can be reached. Culture, and it's not just a part of the culture. It's more than that. It's the way that business churns. It's the way that business works. So you need to have that in order to make business, because you need to have the devices that at your disposal so that you can reach people. Just over 50 years ago, about 2/3 of the world population lived in rural areas. Today, about half live in urban areas, and it's probably more than that. The world's population is changing regionally as well, moving from regions of fewer opportunities to regions of greater opportunities. Me personally, I wish I could move more towards the country. I'm getting sick and tired of living in the city. That's my own personal preference. Key issues. There has been a movement of the population from rural areas to urban areas. There has and will be drastic changes in population for different regions. The total world population continues to grow, but that growth differs by country and continent. Developing countries in Africa and Asia are growing quickly. Japan, Russia, and many European countries, the population in the next decade is projected to decline. That's because of the culture. People don't get married. I was on a Zoom call today, and a very unfortunate statement. There was a very nice lady there. I would say she was probably in her early 30s, mid 30s. And she said, I don't have any kids. I have fur babies, meaning dogs or cats. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, wow, that's sad. But there are a lot of people out there like that they don't get married. They don't want to have kids. They don't want to deal with kids. Or if they do have kids, it's going to be one, at most two. So there's definitely a population decline because of the world view of marriage and divorce rates. I mean, it's not the same world. Back in the day when I was growing up, I had 2 kids in my class that were divorced. That's it. Today, like one of my girls was telling me, she was a little kid, she was in class, and she said, Daddy, I want to be included in this, I feel excluded. There's a clique of divorced girls, kids whose parents are divorced. And I told her, sweetheart, that's not something to feel bad about. I mean, you feel bad for those kids who don't have 2 parents at home, but can you imagine it's become so normal today? I'm not saying there should ever been a stigma, but it's normalized. It's not considered something weird anymore. 50, 60 years ago, if you were divorced, you were considered to be like from the moon. Today, if people get divorced, it's unfortunately so very common, and that changes marketing as well, because the people that the services and like things that divorced people need, the legal services and arbitration services and whatnot. Now you have this whole new economy to help people transition. No money, no market. So let's do some basic economic terms over here. I don't want to get too heavy into it. That's not really what I'm here to do. In order to have a market, consumers must have money. Duh. That's pretty obvious. The 2 popular measures of national income are gross domestic product, otherwise affectionately known as GDP, which is the total market value of all goods and services provided in a country's economy in a year. And this includes residents and non-residents of that country. So it's gross, it's everybody. GDP includes foreign income. GNI, or gross national income, is similar to GDP, but GNI does not include income earned by foreigners who own resources in that nation. Marketers should examine GDP, GNI, and other measures in order to get a complete picture of income. Because if the GDP is awesome and the GNI is awful, what does that tell you? Right. So you have to look at it that way. Okay. So how am I? And then I have to look to see who the players are in investing in a country, and I'm going to have to try to pivot towards them. GNI per capita, GNI and GDP do not indicate how much money is in the hands of individuals in a country. It just shows you the general financial picture of that country. GNI per capita, dividing GNI, gross national income, by the nation's population size is a measure of individual income, which is very important to you as a marketer. It gives some idea of the income levels of the people in the country, whether it's a third world country, a second world country, a first rate country. The large number of countries with low GNI per capita is a stark reminder that much of the world's population lives in extreme poverty, and that's really, really sad. And sadder than that, we are probably one of the richest countries in the world, and we have such a homeless problem. I can't tell you how sad it is. In the building where I work, I have this homeless woman that squats in the stairwell. I've had to actually ask the police to come and ask her to leave because we have sick people coming in to be seen, and who knows what you can't have people squatting in your stairwell. You got patients coming up. It's just not a thing, and it's sad. Your heart breaks for this person, but it's so common. I walk on the street and I see beggars, I see homeless people. And it baffles my mind. It really does. Anyway, technology adoption races across continents. Cell phones, internet, smartphones. Technology affects the world around us. As mentioned before, data usage, internet usage, and of course, just to update the slides a bit, the smartphone usage. Smartphones have become so ubiquitous, it's almost impossible not to get a smartphone. You have to pay extra to get a dumb phone. So smartphones are standard. I think in the past 7 or 8 years, they've really been so popularized. I think everyone pretty much has one. If you don't have one, I commend you that you haven't succumbed to the trend, but it's pretty much unavoidable at this point. The adoption of these technologies may have their greatest impact in developing countries. As adoptions of these technologies speed ahead, marketing managers will need to adjust their marketing strategies accordingly and make things right. Here we have some projected trends. The overall distribution of population is critical to the analysis of market. Using the United States as an example, this exhibit shows the current population and population growth can vary greatly in different regions of the country. You can look at the slide yourself. Let's look at slide 33, population trends in the U.S. We have the graying of America. People are growing older. Here's just to pull up a chart, just some interesting factoids here. Let's look at the chart. Death rate charts from 1900 to present in the USA. Let's just see. Hopefully I won't get anything. All right. Why isn't this loading? Let's just look at the chart here. Let's just expand this. Okay, I want to see how we could get this opened. Control plus, will that work? Your death rate, I'm looking for a good, no, it doesn't tell you male versus female. Nah, this is not what I was looking for. There used to be a chart that was so good. Okay, here we go. Maybe this will be good. No, I don't like the kind of chart. I like a table chart. Come on. I want a nice, easy chart. Yeah, hold on. Let me look again. That's info, please. Let's just see if this. No, this is not it. If not, we'll just abandon this. Death rates. Nah. I know that like a man in the 1900s will live to be like 43, 44, and a woman will live to be 47. Now women are living closer to 80 and men are closer to 76, 75. And the reason for that is antibiotics. And just think of yourselves as children. I don't think anybody here knows somebody, doesn't know anybody who had strep throat or you had strep throat. And for many, strep throat would have been enough to kill a person. I know that George Washington died of strep throat. He didn't have a CVS where you can go get amoxicillin or some other drug. So as a result, people are living much longer. There is no more smallpox. All these childhood mortalities are reduced. People are not dying in childbirth. You rarely hear of a woman dying during childbirth. It's almost unheard of. So all these things cause people to live much longer, and that's why we have what we call the graying of America. And that basically is the rock and roll generation of the 60s and the 70s, the baby boomers. And they are the largest demographic out there right now, wealthiest as definitely. Generation X, something that called Gen X, refers to the generation born immediately following the baby boom from 1965 to 1977. Generation Y, sometimes called millennials, refers to those people born from 1978 to 1994. This group emerged from the echo boom and is generally larger in number than Gen X. This group grew up with technology, and so did I. Although I was born in 1973, I was definitely born with technology. I'm kind of like on the cusp. I may not be as technologically savvy as some people younger than me, but I have enough technological savviness that I don't stick out like a dinosaur. And of course, I could always improve my knowledge, and I'm not scared of technology. Generation Z refers to those born since 95. This group is still young, so ideas about its emerging values are more speculative. And as we move on, they will become more and more bigger players in the arena of business. Screening criteria help narrow down the specific strategies. Qualitative criteria, quantitative criteria. Let's look at this. Summary overview of the slide. Successful, innovative firms have strong programs for evaluating opportunities that they identify as a result of scanning the environment. These techniques help them select the opportunities most appropriate for the firm's particular competitive position. The key issues to look at here: marketers must develop and apply screening criteria. Quantitative criteria include sales, profit, and return on investment, ROI, goals. Qualitative criteria summarize what businesses to be in. And, it's the touchy-feely, why should we go to this business or that other business? It's because people want certain things. It's not just totally black and white. 25% said yes, 75% no. So qualitative criteria summarize what businesses to be in and what strengths and trends to use as a base. Many organizations now screen opportunities on sustainability, the idea that it's important to meet present needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The whole marketing plan should be evaluated against these criteria. Slide 35 is basically a graph. We're not going to go into that. It's not necessary. Slide 36. So this is a GE planning grid. Just to basically go over it real quickly. Graphical planning grids help managers summarize the interaction of several key factors. If you look at this grid over here, you see industry attractiveness as one factor, and it's basically graded from high to low. The same is true with business strengths, and you have different colors that basically tell you if there's borderline growth, no growth, or growth. So the General Electric strategic planning grid positions opportunities according to industry attractiveness and business strengths. Those are the axes. Industry attractiveness is based on characteristics such as size, growth, and competitive structure. Business strengths, resources of the organization like people skills, technological position, growth, market share, or profitability, among others. Using industry attractiveness and business strengths, a manager can show where an opportunity appears on this grid. Opportunities occupying the green area of this matrix should be pursued. Such opportunities occur in more attractive industries and better fit with the company's strengths. Opportunities falling in the red area are ones that a firm should avoid. Those are potential landmines, and in the middle, the yellow areas are borderline opportunities that the firm needs to analyze more fully in order to determine if they are worthwhile. A company may be able to develop a marketing strategy that offsets the lack of strength or low attractiveness in a given industry. And finally, continuum of environmental sensitivity. Planning grids and portfolio analysis, looking at the different businesses that you have within your general larger business, apply to international opportunities as well. However, it might be more difficult to completely be familiar with all of the environmental variables at work in foreign countries because you don't live there, so you don't know how things work. The farther one goes from the familiar territory, the greater the risk of making big mistakes, especially with not knowing the legal environment and also not understanding the cultural environment. Key issues: marketers must evaluate the risks. Risk assessment varies from market to market. International markets may be evaluated according to the likelihood of drastic political changes. Risks vary along the continuum of environmental sensitivity. Most industrial products are relatively insensitive to their environment. Industrial firms may find it easier to use the same marketing mix they use in domestic markets in a new international market, but that could be dangerous because if you don't tweak it, then the people in the new market are just not going to react to it. Consumer products closely linked to other social and cultural variables are very sensitive to their environments. For example, when Disney opened a theme park in France, parks failed to consider the local French customs, such as serving wine with meals, which they were deficient in. Disney initially failed to meet its sales goals, but after adding local touches, the park became more successful, more French-friendly in that example. Basic commodity-type products may have some sensitivity to the environment, so a marketing mix may require minor changes. So it's like artillery. You shoot a shell, it's off the mark, then you adjust the height, and then you get it closer to target. Basic commodity-type products may have some sensitivity to the environment, so a marketing mix may require minor changes. If the risk of an international opportunity are hard to judge, then it may be wise to look first for opportunities that involve exporting and having help exporting. That's the end of the lecture. Thank you very much for